Hello, I am Jared McNett, a political reporter for the Sioux City Journal and frequent guest on the On Iowa Politics podcast. I'm here today to chat with Ryan Melton, the Democratic challenger in Iowa's 4th congressional district. He's running against Republican incumbent Representative Randy Feenstra. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, Jared.
So I think maybe the easiest way to start is to just get a little bit of background about you for folks who might not know you. So, how old are you? What sort of work do you do outside of running for Congress? And where do you live currently?
I'm a 38-year-old father of two boys, 17 and 4. I've been married to my wife, Laura, since 2014. I live in Nevada, Iowa, in Story County, and I work from home. I run a team of 19 at a Fortune 100 company that's based out of Des Moines.
Gotcha. And that's nationwide, correct?
That's right.
Gotcha. And what initially made you want to run for Congress this cycle?
So initially, um, when JD Schultz announced that he wasn't running again for a third time mid last year, that was when my interest and my wife's interest really picked up, but not because we thought we would be running. More, we just wanted to know who was going to run next and trying to figure out how we can support that person. But by early January, it was clear that there was a real risk that there was not going to be a Democrat on the ballot in the 4th congressional race. And so my wife and I had a conversation, and quite simply, we agreed that not having a Democrat on the ballot that just simply wasn't an option. And so, my life isn't really built for a run for Congress. I got a full-time job, a wife and two kids, and I've never had any plan to run for public office before, even though I've been asked to do so from time to time. But it just felt like an obligation. It felt like if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. And yeah. And then from there, once I got in the race, having a master's in U.S. history, I can talk to you all day, every day about the many good things that we've accomplished for the people via our representative democracy. I'm not naive enough to think that it's perfect, but if we lose that mechanism, we really lose what we need to fight the good fight for the people. And so, to me, I really think we're at a crossroads moment with what January 6th represented, and the fact that so many seem to think that what happened on that day and surrounding that day is okay. And it's absolutely not. And so we need an all hands on deck approach right now to preserve and to strengthen our democracy. And we're certainly not going to do that if the only person in the 4th congressional race is someone who called the January 6th insurrectionists wonderful people that got carried away, and who has, voted against the creation of the January 6th committee, and who still gleefully brags about Donald Trump's endorsement, when we know that an acceptance of Donald Trump's endorsement is a rejection of American democracy. So that's another compelling reason I'm running. And then I'm just running to address the massive population declines in our district that are leaving our schools, businesses, and hospitals, and really our communities and families vulnerable mid and long term.
How have you sort of balanced making a serious run for Congress with also still having to have a full-time job and obviously having a family too?
Sorry, you cut out there a little bit. I'm hitting that rough spot as far as service. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. How have you kind of balanced making a major run for Congress with a full-time job and having a family as well?
A lot of sleep deprivation. I don't really think there is a way to balance it. I think you just have to sacrifice. And back in January when I announced I was running, my wife and I knew that this year was going to be incredibly tough on the both of us. And so really, there is no way to balance it. You just have to suffer through it, and you have to sacrifice, and that's what I've done. And yeah, I physically I do not feel all that great, being putting in 12 to 18-hour days, 7 days a week since January. But I mean, the cause is really a rejuvenating one. And when I get out there and talk to the people, when I have so many people come up to me and tell me, how much gratitude they have for what I'm doing and for the fact that I'm standing up for those that often have voices that are not heard. Those kinds of things keep you going.
And in your earlier answer, when I was sort of talking to you about what initially made you want to run for Congress, you mentioned in part all of the accomplishments that just America has had as a democracy. Personally, what are some of your proudest accomplishments that you've had so far in your life?
Well, I grew up in poverty, and no one in my immediate family, my mom, my dad, my siblings, no one from that group had ever graduated college. And I think my dad just went to college for maybe like half a semester or something. And so, graduating from college and not just getting my bachelor's, getting my master's degree, certainly felt like a momentous accomplishment. Also, no one in my immediate family had, had owned their own house before. And so, we have our own house, and that gives me, some sense of financial security that my mom and my dad never had the chance to experience. So that's that's an accomplishment that I'm just happy that I can give that to my sons, so that they don't have to worry like I worried. Poverty, the poverty that I lived through in my childhood was, it was very stressful. I mean, my mom and my dad worked really hard. They were always working, and they were always struggling and toiling. And but I want to do what I can to make sure my boys don't have to live in a constant state of stress and worry, like my mom and dad, my siblings and I had to deal with when we were growing up. So so I'm glad that I can create that for them to some extent. I think that looking back at my adult life, having been a people leader for as long as I have, the number of people that I've helped get promotions, the number of people I've helped coach to have more career and financial security, the fact that I've had a number of people that used to report to me at work volunteer for my campaign without me asking them to, makes me, hopeful that I've been a good people leader and that I've been a good servant leader in that space. I think a lot of big accomplishments have come from that. I've had some of the best teams in my department at Nationwide for years now, and so I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that my boys are good people, and they're loving good kids. So I hope I played a part in that. I mean, I feel like, I wake up every morning just trying to do the best I can to be a good person. And, I think I'm not perfect. I'm sure I fall short sometimes, but, I've got a lot of love in my life. I've got a lot of people that I've been able to help, and a lot of people who have helped me. So those are big accomplishments too. Yeah. So I guess those kinds of things come to mind. And I guess the fact that I don't really have any regret, I really can't look back at my 38 years of life and identify one thing that I really regret. I just try to be mindful about being a kind, loving, good person and do the best I can to uphold that value of mine every day.
And you mentioned already some of the animating reasons for why you decided to run in the first place. if you were to be elected in November, what issues would you make your, top priorities in 2023?
I mean, there's a lot of them. I mean, number one, we got to preserve our democracy, but not only preserve it, we got to strengthen it. So there's a lot to dig into there, whether it be campaign finance reform, whether it be um, putting up firmer guardrails so that elected officials cannot knowingly lie about the integrity of our elections. We need to put up more stringent protections for our poll workers so that someone like a Ruby Freeman in Atlanta is not vilified and doesn't have her life ruined by the former president. I'd be in support of legislation that would prevent anyone from being elected to Congress to ever get a lobbying job afterward. I think a lot of people look for a job in Congress as a stepping stone to a cushy lobbying position, and we need to do whatever we can to not monetize Congress. There are a number of things we need to do there. Beyond that, I want to continue to run through the prism of what we need here in the district. And so that looks like, at the federal level, doing what I can to provide sufficient and robust funding for public education, to fight for reproductive rights, to fight for workers' rights. As far as the carbon capture pipeline issue in Northwest Iowa, I'd like to target the 45Q tax credit program to make it harder for corporations to profit off of eminent domain for carbon capture pipelines. Fighting corporate consolidation of power, that's making our supply chains vulnerable and that's driving up inflation. There are a number of pressing things that we have to get to work on.
And beyond just Democrat, Republican, where do you think the starkest contrasts are between you and one of your opponents in this race, Mr. Feenstra?
I mean, number one is definitely reproductive rights. I believe that it's not the business of the government to tell a pregnant person what they have to do with their body. My opponent is pushing for a federal abortion ban with no exceptions. Gun safety is another big one. My 4-year-old just started preschool and has already had to do a gun safety drill. My opponent votes against every common sense piece of gun safety legislation that comes across his desk. When asked why, he says he doesn't want to inconvenience gun owners, even though gun owners across political affiliation have told me that they're willing to deal with some of that if it means their kids are safer. I think those are two big ones. I think being owned by corporate influence is a big difference as well. My opponent, he is robustly funded by corporate money, and I've rejected corporate money, and I think that's a big influencer on his decision making. So I think those are three big reasons, or big differences between Congressman Feenstra and I. I'm sure there are more.
And then interwoven with that, kind of winding down here, why do you think that voters should ultimately go with you in November?
Number one, we have so many policy threads that are coming to their endpoints at the same time, whether it be gun safety, whether it be reproductive rights, whether it be climate change, whether it be workers' rights, whether it be the cost of education, whether it be the long-term viability of public education. So we're seeing these threads, the ends of these policy threads come together at the same time. And you can see in real time what happens when extreme Republican ideology comes to be. And what you see in our district is you see our public schools cratering. You see parents and grandparents having conversations about how afraid they are that their kids are not going to come back from school okay. You have conversations with women who are afraid that in this district they're not going to have control over their body. And all of these things put together, plus many others, are driving our young people away. We continue to see these massive population declines that are leaving our schools, businesses, hospitals, and communities vulnerable mid and long term. So there's a lot going on right now that will dictate whether or not a lot of our communities in the 4th District survive or not. And so I really think that the long-term well-being of our district is at stake here. I'm the candidate that cares about democracy. I'm the candidate that cares about the long-term viability and sustainability of our communities. My opponent continues to vote against them. And so I think there's a stark contrast, and there are real impacts if we continue to go down the current path we're going down. That will leave us in a more and more perilous position as far as the long-term viability of our district.
Well, those are all the questions that I had for you. Ryan Melton, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Jared. Enjoy the rest of your day.